Howdy, everybody. Hey, Jason Michaels here. Excited to be with you today. Yeah, man, we're here, episode number 7 with Jason Michaels TV. And I guess I can turn this off because we actually are live right now. And I'm excited to share with you what we've got planned. I've got an awesome program planned for you. We are live streaming live from Nashville, Tennessee, and Louisville, Kentucky, and this is the show that combines amazement with inspiration. As I said, we have an exciting show scheduled for you, and my guest today is a gentleman I've known for about 5 years or so now. His name is Steve Haffner. We're going to learn about Steve Haffner. We're going to find out who he is, what he does, where he does it, who he does it for, and how he's dealing with COVID-19. I'll tell you what I know about him, and I'm going to let him explain it to you. He is a decision performance specialist, which conjures up certain ideas in my mind and makes me think, oh, that's interesting. But like, what does that actually mean? So let's meet him right now. Bring him to, all right, there he is, the man himself. Steve, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, doing great, Jason. Thanks for having me. It's good to see you.
I am excited that you decided. It's so funny. Every time I do these live streams, I always like at the beginning, I'm like, I'm so excited. I'm very excited. But apparently I am excited. So
you're an excitable person.
I'm a very excitable person. I get excited about new projects and things that are creative efforts, and then the opportunity to either get to visit with people that I've known for a while and introduce them to other people that I know, friends, fans, clients, potential clients, stuff like that, but also to get to know new people and to learn more about them. I just think it's tons of fun. Okay, so you're a decision performance specialist. You're also a keynote speaker. What does that mean, Steve?
Well, before I start, I should say I'm a little bit sad today. In fact, everybody around here is kind of in the doldrums because you know what was supposed to be happening this week in Louisville, Kentucky?
Oh, is it the Derby?
It's the Derby. Tomorrow was supposed to be the Derby. Of course, that's not happening. So we're all, and the week leading up to the Derby is a huge festival, and everybody's going out, having fun, doing amazing things. Right. None of that got to happen this week. So
does that mean we need to go ahead and drink our mint juleps now? Is that
sure. All weekend, starting now. Sure, why not?
If you had told me this earlier, I would have gone and I would have just been like, hey, ready.
Yeah. Well, anything with some Kentucky bourbon in it will suffice for this weekend.
Right. Absolutely. So what does this mean? So I want to find out what it means, and then I want to talk about how you became a decision performance specialist, because I've known you for a while now, and you have an interesting backstory about how this whole thing developed. So break it down for me. Tell me the whole thing.
Sure. Okay. So I'm a speaker, and instead of just calling myself a leadership speaker or a peak performance speaker, while you do as a speaker, it's important people have an idea of your category, your area, because you don't want them to be too confused, but you also need to differentiate yourself and make yourself unique. Why should people hire you over somebody else? And I came up with the term decision performance because I talk about how our subconscious impulses, illusions, deceptions, cognitive biases, mental shortcuts called heuristics, how they screw up our decision making. And they can make us be less effective as decision makers. We're not as good at our jobs. We're not as good in our relationships, and we don't achieve our goals as well, and we don't reflect our values as well if we're not aware of some of these things. And so our decision performance, how well we perform at decision making, suffers. And if we can become more aware of what's going on inside in our subconscious, then we can take some steps to mitigate some of those negative influences so that we can then improve our decision making and improve our decision performance.
So let me ask you this, so you automatically make me wonder about something when you explain this to me, and I think, and it's interesting. There's got to be a lot of stuff going on in our heads right now with this pandemic and being safer at home, and there's so many things because this is an unknown thing and everybody's just trying to deal with new situations. Does it bring out anything in your mind as far as, some of the stuff that you speak on that you can, I don't know, could you give me advice how to deal with this situation better?
Oh yeah, yeah, sure. In fact, I've written a couple of blog posts specifically about that. So
Okay.
what kind of the first thing I start most of my talks off on is explaining what the lizard brain is. I call it just the lizard, which is the oldest part of the brain that works on impulse and emotion, and its job is to keep us safe. It's the flight or fight syndrome, but it's mainly flight. If we can avoid threats, our lizard brain is going to try to get us to avoid threats. Okay? And one of the ways is to get us to act fast. Because if you think about small animals, animals in the wild, if they don't make a decision fast, they're going to get eaten, right? or something else bad will happen to them. You think of that squirrel in the middle of the road when you're driving up,
Right?
Well, the one that runs off to the side and up the tree, good for it. It made a decision quickly. That one that starts going zip, zip, zip right back and forth in front of you, one, that uncertainty, it's kind of dangerous. So our lizard brain craves certainty, and it's the feeling of certainty that is important. Doesn't really care if what we feel certain about is true or not, if it's real, as long as we have that feeling of certainty so that we can move quickly and make decisions faster and act faster, stay safe. Well, you hit on it when you were talking about COVID-19, when this all came down, and it was rather sudden, wasn't it? I mean, one day I've got all these speaking engagements, and then it's like within a couple of days, they're all gone, or they're all postponed, postponed or canceled or going virtual or whatever. And so all of a sudden, everybody gets hit with all this uncertainty. We have all these questions. Is my job going to be safe? Is my business still going to be around? Is it going to survive this? Am I going to survive? Am I going to get this thing? What's the death rate? Am I in danger of getting killed by this? Or is my mom in danger of it? What's going on? And there's a lot of uncertainty by the experts as well, because this was a new thing coming out. We've had pandemics in the past, but this one's different, and compared to 1918, things are a lot differently now. So our reaction is different. But all that uncertainty, our lizard brain wants us to get some certainty out of all of that. And so, what we do, we have all these mechanisms, these cognitive biases that make us feel more certain. So we try to get information, and all the information out there might be real, it might be false, and we know there's a lot of false information that comes to us, and we process it in ways that makes us feel more certain about where we're going or what's going to happen. One of they say the mother of all biases, cognitive biases, is the confirmation bias. You may be aware of that. A lot of people have heard of that one because it's such a big one. And that is when we look for and consume information that supports or confirms what we already believe.
Right. Okay.
So, and we want to ignore things that don't go along with what we believe because it feels better to know that what we believe is right. And, that's part of the divisiveness that we have in our society today, is because we have the ability to do that. We can pick and choose what news sources or what media sources that we get our information from, right? And we choose the things that support what we already believe. That can cause some problems for us because we're not seeking the truth. We're just seeking comfort. We're seeking that good feeling of what I believe is right. And it didn't just come along, of course, with COVID-19, but it's even more pronounced now because of all the uncertainty that we have. So
I think it's especially interesting the fact that you say it's not about whether it's correct or incorrect. It's literally about what makes us feel better. So you're saying that this is a coping mechanism for a lot of people.
It is, yeah.
It's almost a mental health type of a thing, a little bit.
Yeah, and of course, stress is. I mean, I feel fortunate compared to some people, like people who, because I've always worked from home. As a speaker, right. I'm working from home except when I'm out on the road doing my programs. But right. People who go to an office and now they're home, and if they have young kids, and they've got the kids at home, that I see a lot of stuff out on social media about people really suffering, really having a hard time with the situation. The kids are having a really hard time with it, the longer it goes. So I'm not as bad of a situation as a lot of people are, but but I know I can feel the stress. And so the more stress that we have, the more these emotional cognitive biases and illusions and subconscious shortcuts can get hold. They have a easier path to take hold of us on our decision making when we're under a lot of stress. So one of the blog posts that I had is called Ancient Brains versus a Modern Pandemic, and it talks about basically what I just said about our mechanisms for dealing with the uncertainty, and how that can sometimes cause us problems because we're not allowing ourselves to be informed by real information. And if the information that's feeding how we act and how we make decisions is false, then that distorts the decisions we're going to make out of it.
Yeah, you just said a whole lot. Like that's so. I mean, if you really stop and think about that, there's just a lot there as far as like sort of taking that in, allowing it to sort of just really get into your head and understand all of that. One of the things you said was that whether or not it's true, there are certain, you used the word illusion. You said there are certain illusions that feed us and whatnot. So, but that's a very specific word, and it's a very interesting word, which makes me wonder. And I know you, so I know a little bit about this. But give us the origin story. How did you become a speaker? Where did you start in order to learn these things and to get to where you are today?
Sure. And I use illusion, because it does make a connection between what I did in entertainment and what I'm doing now, and it kind of helps to illustrate why I am a specialist in these things, in decision performance, because it deals with illusion, and I learned a lot about illusion. So
how do you know about illusion, Steve?
Well, let me tell you. So I'm going to go back to the beginning. Well, I'm going to go back to the first.
No, I think you should. Should.
All right. So the first time anybody has to make a huge decision that's going to affect them for the rest of their lives, that's usually when they're in high school and trying to decide what they're going to do next, right? That's the first time you got to make this huge decision about your future. Are you going to go to work? You're going to go to college? If you're going to college, what are you going to study? Because that's going to lead you on your path. Most people aren't very good at making this decision. The average person changes college majors 3 times. 80% of people change their college major after they make the decision. So I had this decision to make in high school. What am I going to do? Well, what do I like? What are my passions? Oh, I love to write. Ever since I was a little kid, I wrote poems. I wrote stories. I even wrote an entire rock opera based on Queen's second album. Yeah, kind of a weird kid. So, but I loved writing. It was fun, creative writing. I also loved to perform. I was in plays in high school and grade school. I loved getting on stage.
Okay.
So I was kind of a shy kid, and this was an outlet for me, and it felt great to get in front of people. So I thought, okay, so these are my 2 passions, writing and performing. So what did I choose for my major? Computer science.
What? I guess you're looking for a sure thing.
What the heck? Very astute of you, Mr. Michaels. The sure thing. I had taken a computer class and I liked it. I mean, computer programming was fun. It was like solving a puzzle to me. And my parents, were like, "Oh, that's the way to go. Look at all the jobs in the newspaper for computer programmers, and that's going to be secure for a long time. You can make a lot of money of that. Something in the arts like performing or, creative writing, that might be a little scary, not quite as secure and safe. The lizard brain wants security and safety, right? So I agreed with my parents. I mean, I could make my own decision, but I said, yeah, okay. So I'll go into computers. So that's what I did. Got a computer degree, set me on a 30-year career in computer science, IT, got into management, of systems projects and things like that. I was actually fully into management, got away from tech, and I was a business analyst for a big insurance company. That was the last job I had. But it was about 20 years into that career, and I came across in a bookstore a book on magic.
Okay.
Ooh, when I was a kid, I loved magic. In fact, my first trick I ever got,
Nickels to dimes. Okay.
nickels to dimes. Yeah, and I
Great. That's a
still,
great classic first trick.
it is, it is. And I got, so my dad took me to a local Caulfield's, which is a magic store here in Louisville, where Lance Burton and Matt King actually used to work.
Okay.
And here's another one I got, the magic color changing silk.
Look at
And I
that.
thought,
Oh.
the guy at the store showed me this, and I'm like, "How are you doing that?" You know, I was 9 years old, or when I first learned magic. You know,
That's right.
that's a long time ago. That was like what, 30 years ago, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 30 years ago for sure.
So I had been into magic when I was a kid, you know. But I as I got older, I got into sports and girls and that kind of thing. Magic just kind of faded out.
Sure.
But then I had a couple of young kids. I came across this book in a bookstore, and I'm like, "Oh, I wonder if they'd like magic too." So I bought the book and I learned some tricks, and my kids, they kind of liked it, but I loved it. And now there's the internet, and I can go out and I can learn all these tricks and see all this and buy. I've got money now, you know, like I didn't when I was a kid.
Right.
So magic became a big hobby for me. I did shows for charities. I did my kids' birthday parties, and it was a blast. I thought, I wonder if I could make a living at this.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is the question every magician asks at some point.
At some point, right? But as soon as I did, my lizard brain just woke up and squawked at me and said, "What, are you crazy?" So this was like 2011, or a little earlier than that. It was like 2010, I guess, probably. "Are you crazy? You know, we're in the middle of a good job. You're making good money. You got a family to support. You know, grow up. Stop thinking about this magic stuff." That's,
right.
You know, so I'm like, okay. So it was loud, that voice. So I put it away, but I still had that back in the back of my mind. Well, without getting into too much detail about my career, there was an opportunity. We basically, where I worked, we had one contract and we had lost the contract. So we had about a year left on our current contract, and everybody had to figure out what they were going to do next. You know, get your resume ready, figure out where you're going to go work. Mm-hmm. And I thought, this might be a signal. This might be the time for me to make that jump, to try out going into business for myself.
Yeah.
I still had that voice squawking up saying, this is stupid. You shouldn't do this, but I really wanted to, because magic, all of a sudden, those two things I loved, writing, creative writing and performing, boom, magic, you do both.
Right.
You write your own routines. And, I'm like, that's one of the reasons I loved it so much. I thought, should I do it? Should I not? Will I be mad at myself for the rest of my life if I don't give it a shot? Yep. Or am I going to screw everything up if I do this? What should I do? If you've ever had a huge decision to make in your life and you didn't know which way to go, it's tormenting. Mm-hmm. It's difficult. It hurts because you're, this uncertainty. We go back to that uncertainty thing. And so I was struggling with this. So one day I drove to work. I was sitting in the parking garage, didn't get out of my car. I was just sitting there thinking about this, agonizing. What should I do? And the song came on the radio. I wasn't really even listening to the radio. I just had it on, and the song came on I had never heard before.
Okay.
Yeah. But I was listening to it. And some of the lyrics, I've got them written down over here. Some of the lyrics were, there comes a time when you got to ask yourself, where am I going? What have I done? Are you taking the orders you've been given or breaking the rules with your own decisions? Isn't it time you tried?
Okay. Wow. It's almost like you needed a sign, and this was like there was a little message to prod you on.
Yes. Yeah. And you might think it's silly that I need to hear this random song on the radio to make a life decision, but sometimes maybe the universe was speaking to me. I don't know. Maybe it was God. I don't know how. Maybe it was just luck, but it really spoke to me. And at that point, it was like a wave hit me.
Okay.
I actually started crying. I had tears running down my face, and I'm not a crier.
You know what? That's actually really cool that it touched you. That was obviously a message you needed to hear right that moment.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess it was a feeling of relief. I knew what I was going to do. I'm like,
Okay.
This is it. This is what I'm going to do. 10 minutes later, I'm standing in my boss's office. I'm saying, boss, I'm quitting to become a magician.
And he said, come back tomorrow and make sure that you're sure you want to do it.
I thought he was going to say, are you on drugs?
Yeah.
Brain tumor, midlife crisis at the very least, right?
Right.
And I thought I would get laughed at, but I didn't. And he, this was a director of a department at a big Fortune 500 company, and he said, Steve, he said, I think that's great. And he said, I wish that I had a passion that I could make a living at, and I could bolt the corporate world as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. And so that started me. So I did. And, I gave a long month or two notice, to my boss. And during that time, I started making phone calls because I wanted to be a kid's magician. That's what I wanted to do. Entertain kids, because I had done some birthday parties and I loved entertaining kids, all ages, So started calling preschools, and boom, all of a sudden people started saying, sure, we'll hire you to come out, and and I created messages to go with the magic for the kids on nutrition and respect.
That's awesome.
So I could teach them and not just entertain them, but
you know what? That sounds like the beginning. I mean, that sounds like the building blocks of what speakers need later on down the road to be able to speak to their clients. I mean, you were doing it for kids at a magic show to give them a message to go along with your magic tricks. But I know a little bit about speaking in front of groups, and I know that groups need, whatever your message is, it needs to be, the group needs to understand how it specifically relates to them.
Exactly. Right. And I tell you, that sometimes there's a stigma about being a kid's magician. People will use as an insult. Oh, that's just, like birthday party magic or something. Mm-hmm. But that's like trial by fire, having to get in front of kids.
A good kids magician has my absolute respect, because I know how difficult that is.
Yeah, you have to know child psychology, and luckily there were other kids magicians that have written books and videos on how to understand kids at different ages. Silly Billy, for example. Mm-hmm. And so I learned a lot, and I loved it. I learned a lot from the kids too.
Yeah, it's hard. It's easier to entertain a room full of drunks than it is a room full of kids.
I know. I've often said that's almost what it's like with kids. It's like that's a room full of drunks, because they will heckle you, and they will tell you if they think they know how it's done.
And there's no guilt associated with it either. They're just gonna spurt it out.
Yeah. You get a deck of cards out. I know that trick.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
But on the flip side, there's something wonderful, marvelous, beautiful about kids and their lack of suspicion.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
They want to have fun. They want to have a blast. So, at a kids show, I would say, okay, I need a helper for this next trick. Who wants to volunteer? Every hand goes up. Oh, I want to come out. I want to come out. They want to do the magic help. They're not afraid that I'm going to make them look foolish or anything like that. They just want to do magic in front of their friends and have fun.
That's great.
So, fast forward to the first show I did for an all adult audience.
Yeah.
I said, beginning of the show, I said, okay, I need a volunteer from the audience. I didn't get this. I got crickets. Everybody's looking down. Nobody wanted to volunteer. It kind of threw me off. It took me by surprise. But we developed, between the time we're kids and the time we're adults, we developed this suspicion, this fear. People don't want to get in front of other people. They're afraid. They don't know me. They don't know what I'm going to have them do.
Right.
Worried about making themselves look like a fool. So that's one of the things that I love about kids, and I tell adults that story too, to try to get them to have maybe a little less fear, and especially in my program, because when I'm doing speaking programs, I get volunteers up too, because I do some of that fun stuff. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I still have a connection I have to make between magic and my speaking career. Mm-hmm. So I was doing magic for a long time, mostly for kids, preschool, schools, festivals, fairs, birthday parties, all kinds of things. Mm-hmm. And it was great, but I needed, I wanted to make more money. I needed to expand more, and I had done a few adult shows, and so I started doing corporate shows as a mentalist. So I don't know how much of your audience is is aware of the difference between a mentalist and a magician. And mentalist, it's mind magic, basically. And some mentalists will disagree with that term, but you're doing things like, I call it virtual mind reading. You're predicting what audience members are going to do, subliminal influence, things like that.
It's very specialized. It's not like, whereas magic is very general, mentalism extremely specialized.
Right. But there's a million different ways to define mentalist, and every mentalist approaches it differently.
Sure.
And I approach it as basically magic. I tell people, as far as, I don't put on any airs about having supernatural abilities. Okay. So some people don't say anything. Some mentalists will do it and don't feel that they need to have a disclaimer or anything about it. But I just make sure people know. It's especially important as a speaker, because I don't want people to think that my speaking content, that I'm pulling one over on them.
You're not trying to deceive an audience when you speak to them. You're trying to use your expertise, having done this for years, to show them truths.
Yes.
Okay.
Right. And well, so I got into mentalism, and then from there I moved into speaking. I had a year in there where I was doing trade shows, and that was kind of soul sucking, but it was hard. Doing all the cold calling was kind of tough, and so for me that wasn't for me. I decided, we all have to decide what works for us. So I got into speaking, and this was, several years ago now, 4 or 5 years ago. And when I was thinking about what I wanted to speak on, what do I know? Do I want to speak on technical topics, that previous career I had? No, I left that career on purpose, But I was thinking, as a magician, as a magician and as a mentalist, we have to know a little bit about psychology.
Oh, no question.
Yeah, if we know what people's minds are doing that they're not even aware of, we can do some miracles. We can elevate the impact of our effects if we can tap into some of the things that they don't know is going on in their mind, little psychological subtleties. So I started delving into that when I was deciding my topic, and that's when I discovered cognitive biases, a whole field called behavioral economics, which kind of throws classical economics on its ear. Because classical economics is based on utility, people making rational decisions, based on information, based on good information. But we don't make rational decisions. Most of our decisions are informed by these cognitive biases, these subconscious influences. So that's how I started learning about all that. I started reading books and watching lectures and learning more about it. And soon I had enough to speak on. So that's how I went from magic to mentalism, and then from mentalism into speaking. Yeah. And I can use the mentalism in my speaking programs for entertainment purposes too. People like to have some entertainment, even though they say they're hiring education when they hire a speaker. Mm-hmm. They want somebody that's entertaining as well.
Yeah, no, that's very true. Yeah, it's interesting. Occasionally, I've even been contacted by people that they initially say, "Hey, we're looking for a speaker," and then what's hilarious is that later on in the conversation, maybe it's a later conversation, but later on in the relationship, they say, "Hey, can you just come and entertain us? That's really all we want." It's like, okay. You don't want a message? Because I was ready to give you a message.
Yeah, but I know you still sneak your message in there.
That's true. Even in my entertainment programs, I still sneak a small, it may be very short, but there's a little bit of a message in there because it's very, very important to me. So, but that's just that's my own bias as far as what I think I need to share with people, because I also believe that sometimes sharing your story, speaking about psychology and ways to connect with audiences, when I share my story, it connects with an audience that entertainment by itself may not connect with.
Right. And it absolutely, that's the way I learned so much through my magic years about connecting with an audience, and I made so many mistakes, and I see a lot of magicians making the mistakes that I made, and I think the two most important things, especially for magicians, and I'll throw mentalists in there as well. One is be unique, have a unique character. And these are the two hardest things, by the way.
Oh, very difficult.
I spent so much time. Who am I? What makes me different? I'm just like everybody else. I'm a magician. That's what I am, but you really need people to get to know you a little bit. That gives them emotional investment and makes them care about your show. Otherwise, it's just a bunch of puzzles, right? So there's that. And then adding uniqueness to the presentations too. You see so many magicians do tricks just out of the box. I would say new magicians, and it kind of gives, magicians have a stigma. A lot of people don't have a very high opinion when they hear the term magician, because there's a lot of, magicians that do just the same thing over that everybody else does, So, so it's having that uniqueness and being somebody that people can relate to, and know that you're different, that you're not just like every other magician, every other entertainer out there. That's really important. Not sure where I was going with that, but
that's all right. So here's what I want to do next. In a second, I'm going to ask you, because my everything about my business and my programs are about amazement and inspiration. And so now that we've learned about you and how you went from being a kid who loved to write and creative writing and to perform, through corporate world, entertainment world, and now speaking, I want to take a look at a couple of clips that sort of show what you do today. And then if you want to, you can talk a little bit more about that. But I'm specifically, after we play this clip, and it's only a couple minutes long, it's not very long. After we play this clip, I'm specifically interested to know whether you have any stories of where you've had to overcome something. Maybe it's some sort of adversity. It could be just a mental thing. It could be I don't know exactly what it is for you. I'll give you a second to think about that while I play this video. But I'm specific. I really want to hear about any stories that sort of have an inspirational flavor to them. Fair enough?
You got it.
All right, cool. We're going to bounce over to this video, and I want you guys to watch and take a look at what Steve does for real audiences.
The good news is, though, and there is good news, we can beat these mind blocks. Hooray for us! It's just such a small change to the way that we think, but it can have a huge impact on us and our lives.
One of the biggest challenges we face as 21st century professionals is, how can we avoid becoming obsolete? How can we make ourselves indispensable?
I recommend considering the unfamiliar. Embrace the uncomfortable. Take a path that you have never taken before.
Well, there are two truths about every professional. Your performance determines your success, and how you think drives your performance.
Good news is we can win some of these battles. But you can't win a battle if you don't show up. And you can't show up unless you know when and where these battles are taking place.
The truth is, we often fail to reach our performance potential. What's exciting is that we humans have an unlimited capacity to improve. But to do it, we need to dismantle the self-deceptions that hold us back. Those cognitive biases, limiting mindsets, lizard brain impulses.
Making decisions that align with our goals and values. Keeping a positive disposition and outlook. Being the best court reporter or transcriber that you could possibly be. Does the lizard care about any of that stuff? No, absolutely not. But we do. No, we do. So we've got one agenda, and the lizard has a completely different agenda.
I have been a tech nerd, a vice president, a business owner, and a magician and mentalist. Yeah, that's kind of a crazy career path. but it gives me a unique perspective on performance. And it allows me and my audiences to have a fun and memorable experience together. What has a bigger bearing on whether you are going to get hired for a position or not? Your job qualifications or your physical attractiveness? Studies show it's physical attractiveness. That's an outrage, and it ought to make some of you really mad. I'm kidding. I don't know how I ever got hired, to tell you the truth. I love to see people win, whether it's critical thinking, creativity, or productivity. I teach them how to take their thinking one step further to defeat those negative influences and improve their game. Fear is just the lizard imagining a negative future.
It was incredible, mind-blowing, woke us back up after lunch. We don't even know where to go from here. We wanted to come back, we wanted to keep talking.
Are you taking the orders you've been given, or are you breaking the rules with your own decisions? Isn't it time you try?
Oh, Steve, look at this, buddy. This is great.
Thank you.
So we saw we saw some clips with a bunch of people doing this thing with the numbers. This looks to me like it's an interactive demonstration. Maybe you're utilizing your entertainment background to keep people interested in your program. Am I accurate?
You absolutely are. And this was an interesting, it was interesting how this came about. So this was a routine that was in my mentalism show, but I had, just like I went back to talking about how we need something unique to make us stand out, I wanted a signature routine that was mine, that nobody else did. And that's kind of hard to come up with because you want it to have impact and be really strong. So my creative juices started thinking, well, you know, I don't want to name what the effect is, but there's a famous effect that a lot of magicians are aware of where there's a lot of people on stage at the end, you know, participating. And so I wanted that kind of an ending because people make the most interesting props, you know, because for the audience, they're more engaged if there's more people on stage.
People are interested in people.
Exactly. So I wanted that. So I took what was an effect that used a phone book, and you know, where somebody randomly picks a number from a phone book, bunch of people on stage, they mix up these envelopes, and when they pull out their numbers, it matches that random number in the phone book. I thought, okay, but that's this thing everybody does. What if I made it a number that somebody could come up with on their own?
Oh, that's cool. Wow,
you know, that somebody could come up with that had a personal connection to them. So I thought about ways to do that, and then I ended up turning that into my signature routine. So they write down a number, personal connection to them. Nobody sees it. They sealed up in an envelope. I have these other people come up. They help me mix up these envelopes, and each person takes one. The other person comes up on stage, writes their number down, holds it up, and when they take their number out of those envelopes, it matches that person's secret personal number that nobody knew but them. So that's how I end my programs. And I moved that from my mentalism. When I first started doing speaking, I hadn't considered using that in my speaking programs. But once I did, and I thought, you know, that's my best effect, my signature effect. Let me try that in one of my speaking programs. And it went off really well, and people loved it. You know, I was afraid it would overwhelm the message. You know, that's all people would remember is the that and other little pieces of mentalism I do during it. But I found that's not true, and I tie that routine into the message of teamwork. So here, just briefly on this, it's very difficult for people to see their own subconscious cognitive biases. It's hard for us to see them at work in ourselves, but it's easier for us to see them at work in other people.
Okay. Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So that's why teamwork is so important. Collaboration is so important. Diversity, getting other type people with different backgrounds, different experiences, because we can see things in each other and we can see different solutions to problems. So I use that routine as a metaphor, as a demonstration of how teamwork can create magical results, magical outcomes. So.
Speaking of magical, I've been told by a little birdie told me you might show us something amazing. Is this true?
I have a little something that I can show you. Yes.
Yeah.
First I wanted to show you something cool, because when I was considering being a magician, I took my kids to a children's museum up in Indianapolis, and there happened to be a magician doing close-up walk around, and I was amazed. He did this one little trick that I thought just was really cool, you know. So I ended up buying it, and I do it in my close-up. So I wanted to show you guys it, just because it's fun and it was part of my journey. Okay, so this is the little box that contains a piece of a black hole. Yeah, I don't know how it got in here, but you can open up the front of it, and there's a little spring, and anything that goes in there falls into this black hole as long as it's in there, and becomes invisible. You can't even see it because it just gets absorbed by that piece of black hole. So let me demonstrate how this works. And for all you magicians that are doing your shows virtual, be sure that your hands don't leave the frame.
Little performance tip for you.
Yeah, because if it does, then it ruins the magic, because you could be doing anything outside of that frame. So let me see if I can keep it in the frame. So anyway, the only thing I have that'll fit, I think I have a pen. Yeah, and this will use this pen, and I can stick it in this little box here, and we can, yeah, there it goes. You can see it. It goes all the way through, right?
Okay.
You can see both ends. The part inside is completely invisible. Yep. Oh, wait, you probably want me to show you, open it up when it's in there.
Absolutely. You have to show
it.
Steve.
All right. You ready? Don't freak out.
Okay. That is freaky.
Isn't that weird?
That is awesome. I've seen a lot of magic tricks. I've never actually seen that before. I don't know if that's possible, but I have not seen that trick before. I love that. That's great.
Awesome.
Nice.
Something new for the guy that's been doing magic his whole life. I like it. One word, Tenyo.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? That's great. If there's somebody who's interested in magic, he just gave you a hint where you can go look for some interesting stuff.
Yeah, they have good stuff. So that's something I do in my walk around for kids.
Great.
Yeah. So I want to show you something that I do in some of my speaking presentations.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So you're going to show me something that you actually do in your talk?
Yeah.
Oh, it's all you.
Yeah. If you want me to, if you'd like me to do that now.
Yeah, go ahead, do it.
Okay. So we talked about certainty and uncertainty, and how when we have feeling of uncertainty, we want to get to certainty. Our lizard brain is trying to get us to get that dopamine hit of knowing, of feeling certain about something. So I use this as a kind of a demonstration of that, of certainty. One of the things I love, and this produces dopamine in people, but dopamine, by the way, is a brain chemical. It's a neurotransmitter that makes us feel good, tickles the pleasure center of the lizard brain. When you get a package on your doorstep, and you don't know what's inside it, ooh, that's exciting, isn't it? That's like, oh, what's the mystery? Maybe you forgot what you ordered, but it's good because it's got a big smile on it most of the time, right? So anyway, this could be a box that shows up on your doorstep. You don't know what's inside. It's a mystery. Okay. There's one thing you know about what's inside the box, right? Whatever's inside the box is smaller than the box. But that's it. You're absolutely certain of that. Talk about certainty. You're certain of that, but that's all you know. You're not certain of anything else. So let's see what's inside this box. Oh, look at this. It's another box. Interesting. Close this one back up. Another mystery, right? So let's see what's inside this one. And we have disappointment. Yeah. There's nothing in there. What a bummer. Oh, well, at least there was one thing we knew before we even started, right? With absolute certainty. And that's that whatever was inside the box was smaller than.
Come on, man. What? See, I don't know this is one of those impossible moments. I don't know if it's a magic trick. It's great. I love that. That is great.
Is that fun? Yeah. So, that's part of the creative process that I love with doing magic and also with speaking, is being able to make connections between tricks, between illusion, and the topic. Making them fit in together is a blast. It's fun. It's fun to work those creative juices. So that's one of the reasons that I switched careers, so I could.
Yeah, that's great. So let's do this. So I want to take a slight change in direction, as you may know, and you do know because we chat from time to time. Oh, I will point out we've got your website on there. We'll give you another plug in a second. I put it up a couple of times on the screen, stevehafner.com. And if people are interested in more information about you, we'll plug you again in a second. But what I want to do is I want to take a second, because you know that I speak on resilience with one of my programs. And I thought, and what I've been doing for actually since the very beginning of these Jason Michaels television live streams, I've been sharing a little element of resilience. And so today I'd like to spend 3 minutes talking about grit. And then I will ask you for your any thoughts that you have about grit. So let's talk about grit. 3 minutes on resilience and grit. So just a quick reminder, because we haven't talked about this in a couple of weeks. Resilience is the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties. It is a mental toughness. And now one way to develop resilience is by developing grit. Now, what is grit? Grit is a dogged, tough resourcefulness. Now, you can develop grit mentally, and you can develop grit physically. We're going to talk about 3 specific ways to develop grit and the elements in each of those ways. Number 1 is something that I call by being active. The second thing we're going to talk about is determination. And the last thing we're going to talk about is vitality. So as far as what I'm talking about being active, this is very much a mental, learning how to become mentally gritty and sort of developing that tough resourcefulness. So one way to develop grittiness is by being active, and being active means that you choose to influence the outcome of the situation as opposed to allow the situation to happen to you. In other words, you are the hammer, you are not the nail. So you choose to become active in a situation rather than passive. You are proactive instead of being reactive. And for me, the way that I think about this personally, I think about it being, even into my 30s, having Tourette syndrome, the tics from Tourette syndrome they were very embarrassing to me, and I felt very much like a victim. But when I started speaking on having Tourette syndrome, I went from being passive to being active, and I actually took some control over that in my mental headspace. Now, the next element is determination. Determination also builds grit. Now, there's a couple of elements of determination we can talk about. There is resolve, patience, and persistence. And I'll explain this in the form of a very brief illustration. When I started building my business in my 20s and I wanted to become a professional magician, I didn't know much about business, but I knew a lot about magic. And I was basically willing to do whatever it took in order to build a business. And what this meant was that I had resolve. I was very serious about my goal to build my business. I had patience, which meant I was willing to wait. I was willing to stay steadfast even when there were delays in the process of building up clients. And lastly, I took action every day. I was persistent. Small, sustained efforts over time is how you build that determination through resolve, persistence, and patience. So we've talked about being active, we talked about determination, and the last element of becoming more gritty is vitality. Now, vitality is often physical in nature, but it can also be mental as well. The idea is that you accept and you appreciate and you nurture your body, because your body is where your energy comes from. And when I was talking about compassion a couple of weeks ago, I was talking about, shouldn't you treat yourself the way you would treat your best friend? The same idea here it goes for the way that you treat your body. Do the things that you know you should do. Get regular sleep, exercise, limit the amount of intoxicants going in your body. By doing those things, that helps you build vitality and that energy. And with vitality, with determination, and by being active, you can build your mental and your physical grit. So, Steve, what does that bring to mind? Anything to you, my friend?
Yeah, yeah. You lost me at limit intoxicants, though. So. I'm kidding. I heard something great the other day. Somebody said, "How are you going to exit from isolation? As a hunk, a chunk, or a drunk?"
Yeah, a hunk, a chunk, or a drunk. Yeah, that's a great. That's I heard that the first time I heard that saying. I was on. You're gonna laugh. You're gonna be. I was on a military tour, and I was on Diego Garcia, which is a tiny island in the middle of the Indian Ocean. And they said that's like the one thing that everybody gets asked. They say, "Are you gonna be a hunk, a chunk, a drunk, or a?" Maybe they had something else. Maybe it was a lunk. I can't remember what it was, but it was very funny.
Yeah.
I love that saying.
As far as grit, though, so there was one little piece that I left out of my journey.
Okay.
When I was an entertainer, I had a chance to do a speaking program. So this was before I would start my speaking business. I'm like, okay, great. And I thought, okay, I'm going to talk about the mind, how the mind works, because I'm a mentalist, So I came up with this program. I thought it was the best thing ever. I thought, oh, this is going to be great. It's going to be a whole new revenue source for me, new career. I gave that, and it bombed pretty much. It wasn't horrible, but it really just was not very good. You can tell when you talk to people after it, and they say, thank you. They say, thank you. They don't say, oh, it was great. You say, oh, thank you so much, But
you were remarkable.
Yeah.
In what way?
Right. That's something we'll never forget.
Yeah.
So that actually spooked me. And I was the opposite of good at that point, because I'm like, okay, I'm not going to be a speaker. And I did not push, forward with that. I did not see what I could do to get better until a couple of years later, when I decided, okay, I'm going to have a real go at this. I am going to forget about that failure, that didn't work very well. And I'm going to try again. Yeah. And I'm going to get better, and I'm going to do better. And then when I started, I was doing free programs for a lot of civic organizations. And it's like, first I was just vomiting information on them. I didn't really know how to be a engaging speaker, even though I came from an entertainment background. I had all this knowledge. I thought they want knowledge, and I kind of overwhelmed them. So it took me a while to work it, hone it, learn about the speaking business and how to speak. Exactly.
You were persistent.
Yeah. And I did. And all of a sudden, I'm starting to get paid. And then, over time, my fees can go up, and people are saying nicer things than just thank you after the program.
Exactly. Right. So we're gonna start wrapping up here in a second, but I forgot. I asked you about if you had any stories of overcoming adversity. Did we get back to that, or did I completely bypass that?
Oh, well, we bypassed it. So
did you have anything you wanted to share?
I do have one.
Give it to me. Yeah.
So I'm a parent. My wife and I, when we had our first child, brought her home from the hospital. When you're a new parent, anybody that's a parent out there, listen to this, how precious and how you're scared, because you've all of a sudden got this life you've got to take care of, Mm-hmm. So anyway, so we had little Lindsay, and we fawned over her and everything. Well, I was turning part of the basement into a play area, okay, for her to play in. And there was this huge mirror down there. It was 6 foot tall by 2 feet wide. And she used to like to crawl in front and blow bubbles in front of it and stuff. It was left there from previous owners of the house. And it was, this huge thing. It was on the floor. And one night, well, I was down there. It was the evening with Lindsay. She was crawling around. I turned to go over and get a toy on the other side of the room. All of a sudden, I heard the loudest, most ear-splitting crash you can imagine. My heart stopped. I turned around and I looked, and there on the floor in a ball was Lindsay, completely surrounded by a 2 foot by 6 foot rectangle of shattered glass.
What?
And then my heart started racing, and I ran over to her, and I reached over, I picked her up out of that, and I'm holding her up, and I'm turning her around, and she's crying, her head off, she's scared, and I'm looking for, there's got to be blood coming out somewhere, and I don't see anything, and I run her upstairs, and my wife's like, what happened? And we put her on the changing table, and we take off her onesie, and look, nothing. She was good. She was unharmed. Mm-hmm. Aren't you glad the story went that way?
Yes.
But yeah, so anyway, even though she was fine, I couldn't forgive myself. I almost killed the most precious gift that we had, the most important thing to me in life. And I almost caused an unspeakable tragedy. And here's the thing. The night before that happened, my wife and I were sitting down on the couch talking, and she said, "Oh, by the way, you know that mirror in the basement?" She said, "We should move that. Can you move that? Because that's not very safe." Lindsay grabbed the side of it the other day, and I don't think it's safe. And I said, "Sure, I'll move it." And I didn't move it. I forgot about it. And I'm this horrible parent. I neglected to keep my child safe, and I had the opportunity to, and I said I would, and I didn't do it. This was all I thought of for the next couple of weeks. I would wake up in the morning thinking about this incident. I was having trouble eating. I couldn't sleep very well. My work suffered. My wife forgave me, but I had trouble forgiving myself until I finally did after a couple of weeks. I was finally able to forgive myself. And what I learned is that we do that a lot. We've got this thing called the negativity bias. Our lizard brain wants us to remember negative things that happen to us so that they don't happen again. It's a way of keeping us safe. Right? So once the negative thoughts activate your brain at a much higher level than positive thoughts do. They've done brain scans and studies of brain activity. And that's true. So that's something that I teach in my programs is we have to be aware of the negativity bias and try to overcome it, especially not beat ourselves up over the negative things that we cause and learn to get over them, right? We have to get past them. We have to close them or you and I have learned something called the completeness process through that program, that coaching program.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah. And so you just have to close loose ends, apologize to anybody that you need to, and in your mind, mark it as complete so you can move on. Say, okay, I'm not going to forget it. My lizard brain won't let me, but at least I can move on, and I've learned everything that I can from this. Maybe not make the mistakes again.
So I'm going to do my small business spotlight, and guess what? This whole live stream has been a small business spotlight for Steve Haffner, more or less. But I really appreciate him being on the show. As you have been able to understand from the last hour or so, he's a keynote speaker and a decision performance specialist, and he helps leaders and professionals become indispensable to their customers, teams, and organizations by unmasking their erroneous mental habits and replacing them with goals-focused and values-based decision making. All information about Steve, in case you want more information, can be found at stevehafner.com. Steve, do you want to do the elevator pitch? Is there anything you want to throw at us? 30 to 60 seconds.
Just that I do keynotes, I do breakout sessions, I do workshops, and I can do keynotes and breakout sessions for conferences big and small, and I can do them as virtual programs also, as webinars or virtual keynotes. And I also have articles that for associations or businesses that have newsletters, blogs, magazines, and they look for content that's relevant to their audience. I can help with that. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. So, hey, we're going to wrap up in just a second. I did promise that I was going to debut a brand new magic video. I just finished shooting it last night, and I'm actually still wearing the exact same clothes. It's on purpose, people. It's on purpose. I did it on purpose. It's a couple of minutes long. It is a piece of magic, but there's also an underlying message. I think everybody's going to enjoy it. So let me share that with you right now.
Belief is a powerful thing. When I was 16 years old, I fell in love with the art of magic, but I didn't believe I could do it. I was wrong. So here's the whole story. What you just saw is a sleight of hand routine, something I fell in love with when I got into magic. But the whole story is that when I first started doing magic, I didn't believe I could perform sleight of hand. And the reason is because one day I was in a magic shop and there was a magician performing a card trick for several people. And another magician standing next to me leaned over to me and said, "Hey, do you see what he's doing? It's called sleight of hand. Sleight of hand is really, really difficult. Some people spend their entire lives working on it." Now, that's what he said, but for some reason in my head, what I heard was, sleight of hand is too hard for you to do, Jason. You'll spend your whole life trying to figure it out and never be able to do it. It's not what he said, but for some reason, that's what I believed. And for the first 2 years of me practicing magic, I had to have a special bag of tricks. I had to have certain things with me in order to make magic happen. I had to have all these different gimmicks and whatnot. I couldn't just show up somewhere and do magic. One day I was performing a show for some friends and a guy came up to me after the show and he busted me. He busted me cold and he said, "That thing that you were doing," and then he named the different items that I was using and the tricks, and it just destroyed me. The experience that I was trying to create for people, giving them this experience of amazement and fun, it just took all the fun away from me. It crushed me. And from that moment, I said, okay, I'm going to go learn that sleight of hand. And here's what I found out. Yes, expert sleight of hand is very difficult, no question about it. But just like in anything in life, there's also a beginner's level. And that's where I started. I learned from the very beginning level, the stuff that you can do with just a little bit of practice and then work your way up. The other thing that I learned was that, yes, some people do spend their entire lives practicing the discipline of sleight of hand, but not because it takes them that long to learn it. It's because they love it so much that they're just dedicated to perfecting the craft and coming up with new ideas. Sleight of hand is something that some people fall in love with and spend their entire life practicing because it gives them that much joy. So here's my question to you. I didn't believe I could learn sleight of hand. In the first 2 years of performing magic, I didn't even try. What's going on in your life? What feels so impossible to you that you believe you can't deal with it? Here's what I propose. Open your mind up to a new way of thinking, see new opportunities, and see what kind of magic it brings into your life. I'll see you soon.
All right.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you very much.
The card chart. Love it.
Oh yeah, it's a good piece. I really like that piece. I really enjoy performing it. Yeah, man, we had a couple of nice comments. People, Tommy Ayers, who I know from Nashville, he used to live in Nashville. But he's up in Pennsylvania now. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks to Jay and Larry and John, and I'm sure my mom is probably watching. And for all I know, half my family is watching. But wanted to say thank you for being here. Today's takeaways: we met Steve Hafner and learned about how to make better decisions. We learned some of the things that go into the way that we think and the way that we make decisions. He shared some amazing demonstrations with us through the screen. We continued our discussion on resilience as we explored the idea of being gritty or developing grit. And I debuted a brand new magic video with a message on belief. Steve, was there anything you wanted to share with us before we start signing off?
No, I just want to recommend that in honor of the not happening Kentucky Derby, that everybody go grab some Kentucky bourbon and keep our distilleries alive.
There you go. I like it. Absolutely. So if you've enjoyed this, I hope that you will tune back in for another episode. You can go to jasonmichaelsmagic.com/JM-TV and drop your name and email address in there, and I will email you details about the next episode, when to expect it, what it's going to be about, who my special guest is. If you're interested in a small business spotlight opportunity, send me an email. If you or if someone you know has a story of overcoming a challenge that was overwhelming or felt quote unquote impossible to deal with, email me that as well. I'd love to touch base with them. And feel free to tell me what you thought of this episode by liking it, sharing it, or just making a comment on either Facebook or YouTube. My email address is jm@jasonmichaelsmagic.com. That is jm@jasonmichaelsmagic.com. This has been episode number 7, and I appreciate you guys tuning in. Take care of yourselves. We'll see you soon.
Bye.